In deference to Muslim custom, Benedict removed his red leather shoes before walking into the building, and Kagrichi, the mufti, this is the Muslim religious official in charge of the mosque, led Benedict through the mosque, reaching the mihrab or niche that faces Mecca. There, the two men paused in silent reverence. The Pope folded his arms over his midsection, just below the large golden cross dangling from his neck, cast his eyes downward, and finally bowed his head as the turbaned mufti, standing at his side, said a brief prayer. End of quote. So the Pope is here. What's the word? He is shepherded by a Muslim religious authority into the mosque and instructed and led to behave as a good Muslim. And in fact, the Mufti later told the press, he congratulated the Pope on praying like a good Muslim. In the Middle Ages, any Christian, let alone a priest, let alone the Pope, might have burned hotly at the stake for doing this kind of thing, for praying towards Mecca barefoot in a mosque. I mean, and of course, the message for distracted Westerners that they hear in the media about all this is that the Pope is being ecumenical, right? That he's reaching out to other faiths, that this is a healing moment in, for example, the Guardian's interpretation, right? The Guardian called it a healing moment, and it said, quote, it was a striking demonstration of a point the Pope had made repeatedly during his visit to Turkey, that Christians and Muslims worship the same God, end of quote. Now, you can pull wool over the eyes of Westerners and tell them, oh, this is the Pope having an ecumenical moment, this is the Pope being tolerant of other faiths. But to understand how Muslims see it, you have to think like a Muslim. Muslims don't think like Westerners, all right? So the way Muslims interpret this is that the Pope is submitting to Islam. That's how they interpret it, that they are winning the ideological war, okay? And the Pope understands this. The Pope is not, the Pope is not an average Joe. The Pope is a highly educated individual, one of the most highly educated individuals on the entire planet, okay? He is the Pope. And the Pope is a world leader. He directs the Catholic Church, which is a major world religion, and he is a head of state. So the Vatican is itself a state, and it has embassies all over the world, okay? The Pope is an incredibly, incredibly powerful dude, and he is playing for world power. His behaviors are not random. They are not trivial. They are not superficial. Every papal behavior is pregnant with meaning and carefully decided and coldly calculated and performed. The Pope knew exactly how Muslims would interpret his behavior because the Pope understands Islam as he demonstrated in his Regensburg speech, right? So the Pope knows that him praying barefoot in the Blue Mosque of Istanbul toward Mecca under the instruction of a Muslim religious cleric, and then congratulated by that cleric on having prayed like a good Muslim, right? All of that means that the Pope is submitting to Islam. That's how they interpret it. So the message the Pope sent is that the Western bosses would not defend the West. Remember the structure. The Pope said something that is true about Islam. Muslims reacted with outrage, right? And then the Pope issued an apology, issued a second apology through Civiltà Cattolica, reassured Muslims that it's okay that they're violent, right? Because they have a just grievance with the West, and the West should adapt to the feelings of Muslims, right? The Pope said all of that. And then He went into the Blue Mosque of Istanbul after saying that Turkey should join the EU, and he prayed toward Mecca from within the mosque. There's only one way for Muslim minds to interpret that. The message means we, the Western bosses, submit to Islam. We will not defend the West. But the Pope was not done. In a public declaration, still on his Istanbul trip, the Pope publicly called Islam, and I quote, a religion of peace, tolerance, and love. In that message, Islam is the religion of peace, is the message that Western bosses have been giving Westerners over and over again for the past decades. For more than a century now, Westerners have been hearing from their own authorities that jihadism is supposedly a distortion of the true message of Islam. That jihadism is supposedly a minority movement that is led by radical clerics and their followers who don't understand what is the true message of the Quran and who don't understand the true message of the Hadith, and therefore have distorted what is a beautiful message of peace, tolerance, and love into a message of holy war and intolerance and subjugation and death for infidels. Okay? That's the message we've been hearing. We're supposed to believe that the jihadis are a minority radical movement that is distorting the true nature of Islam, and we're supposed to embrace Islam as the religion of peace. That's what the Pope said. And the entirety of his message was, we, the Western bosses, will not defend Islam.